So let's go to the next part here, which is also, frankly, probably even more important. Let's go and put this up there, which is that Putin says all infrastructure is now at risk after the Nord Stream hit, which of course he didn't do, though. So he says he condemns the gas pipeline blast as an act of terror and says that Moscow's adversaries are benefiting from the attack. Now, why does this matter? Well, look, I mean, we will never know who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline or not. There's a good enough case to basically say that everybody did it. Either the Ukrainians did it, the Russians did it, the US did it, NATO did it.
UK is a possibility.
UK, whoever did it, somebody's benefiting. Putin says that the adversaries are benefiting. You could make that case. You could also make the case that the Russians had already shut it off, so why does it matter? Anyway, here's what they said. The attacks are an act of terror that set, quote, the most dangerous precedent, according to Putin, yesterday at a Moscow energy forum. He says it shows any critically important object of transport, energy, utility infrastructure is under threat, irrespective of where it is located or by whom it is managed. He, of course, blamed the US, Ukraine, and Poland, saying that they were the beneficiaries of the blast. And look, it's a very ominous comment because let's accept the reality, the possible reality that it was Russia. Well, in that world, that was a major signal to Europe. They're like, hey, this pipeline in the Baltic Sea with Norway, I can cut that off tomorrow. You're dead. You're gonna freeze to death if I cut that off. I can cut off all my gas and I can make life very miserable for you very, very quickly in the event of a real war. And now we've established the precedent, who knows who did it or not, that the Nord Stream pipeline has been targeted, so this is not an empty threat. And that's why, again, everybody is testing each other's red lines up and near the point, and we have no choice but to take it seriously. Because even if, let's say it wasn't Russia who did this, well, now their infrastructure has been hit, and if they internally believe that it wasn't them, then they're gonna look at other energy infrastructure as a legitimate target in protest.
Yeah.
Either way, whoever's responsible, Putin's comments, how we have no choice but to take it seriously, especially given the vulnerability of the European public. Now,
yes.
Germany, as I understand it, has gotten about 95% of the natural gas stocks that they need. So they're actually probably going to be fine over the winter. They basically had to mortgage their entire economy to do it.
Filling up their reserves.
Well, they effectively had to nuke their entire economic prospect for the next 5 years in order to make sure they don't freeze this winter, but they have survived. However, the developing world has not. Pakistan, Bangladesh, many others are gonna have massive blackouts or are gonna be burning coal for a decade, probably more plus, as a result of all of this. Japan also paying. Anyway, like we're gonna have a global recession almost as certainly as a result of what's happening. My point though still being that Germany is a very rich nation. There's a lot of other countries in Europe that need this gas in order to stay on. And to keep the EU and NATO united, it's a very precarious situation because they're not the only ones with high energy bills, and they're not the largest economy on the continent. Germany was always going to probably be fine. It really is the smaller nations, Slovakia, Czech Republic, them that are heavily reliant on this and energy bills.
And they're basically all competing for this natural gas. Putin has used before precedent very poor actions and illegal actions taken by the U.S. government to say, well, if y'all can do it, then you've set the precedent. I'm going to go ahead and do it too. I mean, that was effectively his justification for invading Ukraine here in the first place, was like, well, y'all did in Iraq, so I don't know why I shouldn't do it here. So him using these sorts of actions as justification for his own, illegal and terrible actions would not be unprecedented. Another thing I wanted to note is there was just a UN General Assembly vote, which I think was quite noteworthy. I don't know if you saw this, Saagar, but there has been, there have been a number of countries that have basically tried to stay unaligned in this conflict, to try to stay sort of very neutral. Pretty stunning rebuke of them, though, with this UN resolution that was passed that, is basically like condemning all of their actions in terms of Ukraine. And it passed overwhelmingly, 143-5. So they only had 5 countries who were willing to directly side with Russia. And then you had 35 abstentions of people who were like, nah, I'm staying out of it. And I think that China and India were among those. But, he's clearly sort of lost ground in terms of the public narrative and like the global view of what's going on here. And we covered previously the way that China and India are sort of, also pushing back on the actions that the Russian regime has taken with regards to Ukraine.
Yeah, that vote actually was pretty important. The Biden administration wanted only 105, which was the same number that had the resolution on Crimea. They got 40 more than they actually bargained for, which is pretty extraordinary. The 5 who voted against it were North Korea, Syria, Belarus, and Nicaragua. So some true great company to keep there. For Putin, look, I mean, it shows you how isolated he is. Even China and India not voting affirmatively in that position. And on top of the fact that he was rebuked directly by Modi and directly, semi, by the Chinese Foreign Ministry after the missile attack because of the uncertainty it has caused.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.